Good morning. Getting all set up. We got 89.90 today. Feel good about the hello over there. Bolts. I feel good about the roughs I edited yesterday, so planning on shooting some reference today to kind of help me out, and then hopefully start penciling these today. The other thing I thought was funny is I was watching Rob Liefeld's podcast, which I really enjoy. I don't particularly like his work. Maybe I should because he's definitely very influential. But I do love his energy on his little his podcast, talking about spilling the tea, as it were, about people he's worked with and things he's experienced, and then. But he was kind of funny. The recent one, he was kind of butthurt that somebody said he was mean to them at a Comic Con like 20 years ago, which I just thought was really funny. It's like, they're saying this terrible thing about me on Twitter. It's not true. I'll never do that, ever. Well, I just thought it was funny that he cared enough to respond. Which I just thought was pretty funny. Like, I would never ever do that to anyone. Doesn't make any sense. Um, but he was commenting on how to draw comics the Marvel way, and complaining about a lot of how kind of contemporary comics can be a little boring. I do think there's a bunch of really good stuff coming out at the moment that people like, but he was pointing out in that book that they did some demos with John Buscema where he kind of draws a scene the boring way, and then he draws it kind of more dynamically, changing the camera angles and shifting away from static views. I thought it was funny just because when I teach composition to my university students, I always tell them that they should start with the stupid version of their idea. Unless they have like a really strong, clear idea at the very beginning, or if they're not certain, um, the stupid version is like a really good way of starting your composition, which is basically you sketch out all of the elements of your composition. So it would look, let's see, here we go, blank sheet. But basically, it would look like a kid's drawing. So like if you have your house, so you have like the stupid version I call is like the kid's version of drawing. So you have like your house, you got your tree, and your chimney, and your sun. And you kind of start with that, and then you can kind of shift to different angles, different types of perspective. You can play with the architecture, where the figures are in relationship to the house, what they're doing. But you kind of like to start with that. So it's just like, what are all the elements visually? And then it's easier to kind of move them around. As far as the movie scenes, I'm planning on doing 100. So I am down to the last, 12? So I committed myself to doing 100. And so I've been doing basically 2 a day. And then I'm trying to find, I was looking around for like the next one. I'm going to do, I think, Inception on this page. And One of the problems I've kind of bumped into, I've noticed a lot, is a lot of times the selections that people will put on Pinterest or other places, they tend to be mostly kind of straight on views of the character in the middle. And so it's a little bit of a challenge to find scenes that aren't quite like that. So I was looking at Inception, and the initial ones were all kind of like, well, here's the character standing here in front of this dramatic backdrop. And, it is dramatic and looks great and everything, but I know there's more dynamic scenes in that in there. So I had to find some different angles, some establishing shots, and things like that that were a little more interesting. But what I saw was funny. I was watching. I was like, oh yeah, that's in there too. There's a lot of stuff I teach that I suddenly find, wasn't my bright idea after all. I reinvented the wheel. It's always kind of nice to find it. Um, that it's not some wacky thing that I do. It's one of those things that's always relevant. So I don't want to do any of those top spinning pictures. I just don't think they're that interesting to do. I think we start with the establishing shot. Oh, the building collapsing on the beach. This is basically the third line up here. And we've got buildings kind of coming up over here. There we go. Yeah, so that's kind of the plan is 100 of them. So I'm down. I think should be done next Monday or Tuesday. Um, so um, that's just what I do kind of a morning warm up every single day. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. So yeah, in terms of this stuff, in terms of the other comic thing, I've got those. It's about 8 pages there. I want to do 2 scenes and use them as like a source for a pitch project for submit to some publishers. See if maybe I can get published with that. I think I've got a good idea. I can tell it in a compelling way. And the big thing is getting the pages done. Story is mostly well outlined enough so I know kind of what I want to do issue to issue. And there's that one. And there's guys tumbling in the hallway. Is next. there. Good morning. Let's see. Are the new people recognize the movie here? Well, this isn't that technical. Um, this is just like a 1 point perspective shot here, so I'm just making sure everything kind of lines up for the middle. But could do some technical perspective, I guess. We were just talking about a composition in here a second ago. But it's funny, Rob pointing something out in the classic How to Draw Comics, the Marvel Way book, and they're talking about doing like a basic version and then kind of making it more dramatic. It's like, hey, that's kind of how I teach my students at the university. Is I tell them to do like I call it the stupid version, and I'll start with that, and then make it more interesting. Yeah, but that course I was promoting last week. It's actually not even that technical. It's a basics of perspective course. So it's really for like, let's see, that should be up here. It's really for beginners. I do have technical perspective stuff, courses for that, but um, if anything, the upper one is a bit more technical because it's a 2 point perspective shot, but yeah, I mean, I've taught it for a long time, so I enjoy it. Like the technical side, even people freak out about it a little bit, but just perspective in general, they'll freak out about it. So you have to line things up and make it all fit. Yeah, well, once you kind of get into it, it's not that bad. The technical thing's a bit more challenging, but I think it's actually. I mean, I've made it easy for me anyway to teach and learn. Um, Because it's just kind of really what it's helping you do is it's understanding how people actually see things or relatively see things. It's kind of like how a camera sees the world. And understand that it's not that scary. It just looks scary, so it's not really that terrifying. And if you haven't done it before, it can be a little bit nerve wracking. But once you've done it a few times, like when I was teaching it at Ringling before coming up here, one of the things we would do as we kind of started into it is I'd have them create a new perspective layout every single day of class. And so they would come in, and I'd have them try and do as much as they could from memory. So I'd come in and say, okay, let's get set it up. And you've got 15 minutes or whatever to lay it out, get it set up, and so we can get going. It's all on paper too. So it's not even on the computer. And after we'd done that for a couple of weeks of classes, so like 4 days of class or whatever, it's really easy for them to get it set up. You just have to memorize a few numbers. You're not even doing any math. You just say, okay, 60 degrees here, 45 degrees there, and 90 degrees there. And that's all there really is to it. And then it's understanding where certain things relate to each other. And the hardest part really is just keeping track if your picture goes beyond, a couple sets of 2-point perspective vanishing points. Once you kind of get beyond the first set or the second set, then it can be hard. And that's just mostly just because it's easy to lose track if you're not paying attention. But even then, like it becomes really obvious when you make a mistake. It's like things don't quite fit quite right. Um, so um, so that's the thing. Um, um, it's just understanding the different kinds of perspective, the 1 and the 2 and the 3-point. Really, the same thing. It's just how you're looking at an object differently, um, and how it relates to the entire scene. And once you kind of understand that, it's not that terrifying. I say anyway. So. Um, so that's the thing with perspective. So, and it's time consuming. It does take time. That's the other thing people consider when they're doing it. Is just take some time to focus. Here is our little hero down here. So, yeah, but I definitely recommend it if you haven't gotten into it. It makes a big difference for how artists understand and interact with their artwork. And being comfortable with it affects your ability to do new things. Good. More people popping in. Yeah. But yeah, learning to kind of see it's the trick. Um, see things spatially that way. Yeah, it's yeah, it can be a. I'm sure that's an extra challenge. I don't deal with that too often, um, but yeah, I definitely see that being an extra challenge where it's like, why do I care about this? Why do I care about balance? I just want to get back to the thing. Yeah, I was trying to explain facial proportions to one of my nieces. She's like 10. She was drawing space. Like, well, if you did this and this and this, it would look more kind of normal. It wasn't, just like, halfway down, and a third of the way down. And we got that part right. There are other issues, but it would definitely look more human than what she was starting with. I think one of the problems she was dealing with in terms of that is like, A, she's just a kid. She doesn't really care that much. Um, I always love when people are like, "Oh, my kid is so talented." They show me their work, and I'm like, "Yeah, they draw just like a kid of that age draws." Like, there's nothing, I was disappointed by that statement. So, well, probably what I was doing at that age. I just do what kids do. But I had a student when I was in Hong Kong. He had pretty severe. Both he and his brother went there. I only had the one for my class. And he had pretty severe autism. Um, and he had to work really hard to get projects done. He had a special kind of helper. His mother was some kind of TV executive, so he had money. You know, he wasn't worried about getting him a job or whatever when he was done with school. He's going to be cared for by that for the rest of his life. Um, but he worked really hard. What's funny is his drawing never got any better, but he had really good color, which was interesting. But I liked having class. It was kind of funny. If I mislabeled or called something wrong, he would be like, "Oh, that's not that. It's this." Um, but he had to have like a helper there to kind of help him focus. She didn't do the work for him, but she was there to kind of like, "All right, now it's time to get back to work. Put your thing away, or you've got 5 minutes to look at your whatever thing." Um, that's what she was there, kind of helping him with. So she was in a bunch of my classes with him, just kind of helping him out. I haven't seen since. We had another student there that is somewhat similar, not quite as intensely on the spectrum, but still pretty intensely there. Like he was in my initial classes, he would kind of get up and hover over me while I was helping other students because he wanted to get help, and so I had to kind of point out to him like, okay, well, this is where I'm at right now. This is where I'll be next. This is where I'm going after that. So you kind of anticipate it a little bit better. And he's been like really involved with like Special Olympics stuff since then, but he really could have used like someone in there that was specifically trained to assist him there. Um, yeah, so then it was definitely very creative. Wasn't really worried about them, going out there and you know, working quite the same way as other students were planning on it. But no, the other one, I wasn't there for it. The one who didn't have a helper, but he was in a figure drawing class for the first time, and the professor there told me that there was kind of an awkward incident, I guess, where he kind of just went over and like the model was just kind of sitting in the room on a chair, just like reading her phone or whatever, and he came over and just like hovered over her and looked at her really intently, which was really funny. Good morning over there on the YouTube. Feels like everything's more properly set up. It's still a little choppy. I'm not sure why it didn't used to be choppy like this. I am using a really old MacBook Pro as kind of the main streaming computer. I don't think it would do. I think it's something with the way the computer's connecting over the network. So, because it's really crispy smooth on my computer, where the feed goes initially. Um, um, but yeah, but they all worked really hard. That was one thing that I appreciated about him. But he would, yeah, the one who had the helper in the class, a lot of the painting assignments, like he would spend like 2, 3 times as much time on them as the other students because it just harder for him to do. So when I have experiences like that, I was like, well, I don't really care. Yeah, this is Inception. Good guess. Um, I don't know if I said it before yet, but that's how I'm going to do this page. Is all going to be Inception. The only thing I was bumping into problems with this page of stuff was just trying to find compositions that weren't strictly symmetrical, in terms of at least the positioning of the different characters. Um, I am not using Joker today, so this is Inception. Someone's asking over on YouTube that I was doing Joker. I was kind of like randomly doing a certain number, and then I was like, if I just did like one movie per page, simplify my life just a little bit that way. So this is 89. This will be 90. So I've got 10 more after that. I love that he actually built a hallway that he had to spin. I think it makes a really big difference for the movie that they actually filmed this way. Um, Um, Keystone skill of a good illustrator is the question over on the YouTube side. I'd say this the be able to tell a story visually. But I would say is the most important thing. I think it's more important than like accuracy in drawing or beautiful line work. Um, if I had to pick one, it's just being a really good visual communicator. Like, because you can look at examples like that with, like, say, The Simpsons, right? In terms of animation, like it's not what you would call high-end, great animation, but the storytelling is really, really good, and that's always, I think, the most important thing. Or you look at, Rick and Morty or something like that, where the animation is really not the selling point of the show. Like the character designs work, the scenes work, but the most important thing about it is their ability to convey narrative through story and characters uh, that you come to care about to one degree or another. So that's what I would say. I don't know. What do other people think is the key to being a good, a great illustrator? What's a keystone for that? So that's what I kind of think of as being the big thing. So, because like one thing that I've commented on before, but one thing that I kind of found in myself to be kind of a mistake in terms of my own pursuit of development and education was I really, really focused on skills development. And that's, it's important. I don't, want to say it's not valuable or good or useful. Um, but I kind of discovered, even early on, but I still kind of do it anyway because I enjoy developing skills. But um, I kind of realized after kind of meeting more professional illustrators and painters and things like that that really the key was having something you want to do, like a story you want to tell, a project that you want to accomplish, something you want to bring into the world, and and that thing that you want to do should drive your skills development. So, like, if you're trying to tell like a comic book story, and like you need the space to feel really real and big, and sense of scale and relationship of the character to the space, that's like that tells you, oh, I need to learn perspective. Um, Practicing that storytelling. Well, a lot of it depends on the kind of storytelling you're doing, right? So if you're doing sequential storytelling like you'd see in a comic book, it's important to study things like filmmaking and narrative beats and how that works. If you're trying to tell a story in a single image, then it's about defining the relationships of the different elements of the image with each other, which can be very challenging, right? We were talking about that a little bit here before, earlier, with what I call the stupid version of composition, because it kind of came up in Rob Liefeld's recent podcast where he was talking about John Buscema. Yeah, it's always about the storytelling, and I kind of missed that point just because I think with skills development, it's like it's a nice kind of objective measure of what you're doing, and it's safe. Like I get some kind of sometimes I get I was getting some feedback that maybe my classes are too technical in school, and I've actually adjusted them to be still be technical, but the point of the technical stuff is to get into the story stuff. So they're The students do want to learn, technique. They want to learn perspective, and color theory, and drawing, and all those specific things, painting, and all that. That's all important. But um, yeah, the storytelling or the images or the project you want to do, that should be the real big definer of what it is you're studying. So, like, if you want to create an animation, then you got to learn the principles of animation, right? If you want to do something, build an amazing 3D ship, then you got to learn 3D. But one way of like doing sequential storytelling that I've been using for myself that I think is really useful, because I was mentioning, in here earlier, the what's his face? Got a lot of white in these pictures. We need to leave the gray behind. But I was mentioning Rick and Morty, and that's done by Dan Harmon, and he's kind of famous for putting together a revised 3-act structure that is 8 steps. I've talked about it in here before, but the idea behind it is you have a circle, and at the top of the circle you have the word "you," and what "you" is, it's kind of the establishing of the character, who they are, what's seen, what their situation is, um, you know, what they do, what they're like, where they live, all the kind of establishing elements of a character is the "you." And then you go into the next step of this. The next step of the circle is need, and so that is that something is not right, that they need to change something about their situation. So, like in Inception, as an example, we established early on that DiCaprio's character is kind of a guy on the run. He's he's a they established in the first thing like what he does. So he goes into people's dreams and convinces them to make certain kinds of decisions or extract information from them in a way that you can't do normally. So that's who he is. But he also has this kind of issue where he's lost contact with his family. Um, so that's kind of his view. Is like this is who he is. So this is what he does. The situation, kind of the loss of contact with his family, is a kind of need in the movie. So he wants to kind of get back together with his wife and reunite with his kids. Um, and then his other need is he needs the resources to do that. And so he comes across this guy who offers him this chance to clear his name so he's no longer a criminal. And that would allow him to return home to his family. And so that's his need. And so the next step is go. And go is the decision to kind of move forward. And so that's in the movie. He accepts this offer, and he decides to move forward. So it's moving past the threshold. Um, and then the next step after that, so you need go, and then we go into search. And so this is where you're trying to kind of solve the problem that the need has presented. You're trying to get where you want to go. So in their case, they're searching for this way to convey this inceptive thought. So this guy thinks that he's come to this conclusion all on his own. To transfer some wealth or authority of a company or whatever it was to this new person that wanted it. And that's kind of the big thing that they're doing in the movie. So they're searching for that. So that's where they go through all the different levels of the guy's brain and process of kidnapping him, the fight in the hallway, and ending up here. They're going deeper and deeper. And anyway, eventually they find it, so they get to where they want to go, where the inception can happen. And as they're about to acquire what they want, that is when they take it. And when they take it, that's where a price must be paid, and it has to be a severe price. So in his case, he's about to take it, and like his wife shows up, and he has to go so deep in that he might not be able to get back out, right? So he shows up in this kind of weird land of the subconscious, and we don't know, if he's going to be able to actually get out of the situation that he's created because of his need and then his taking of that. So once they take it, though, they pay this price, and then they don't know what's going to happen exactly after that because usually it's a problem for them. And then once they take it, the price changes them. So in this case, he has to do this full encounter with his wife, or this echo of her, or whatever it is inside his head, that's getting in his way. So dealing with this kind of ephemeral ghost of his wife who's tormenting him in these dream spaces, and and so his kind of willingness to deal with her changes him, and then he returns with that change exacted on him. So that's kind of the Dan Harmon story circle. And it's not like an absolute must, but it's a good framework for a story. If you're trying to convey like an episodic type story or a comic or something like that. If it's like a single story, it's really great for that. If you're doing like a larger, longer story, like a TV show would do or a comic book might do, you might do the first few steps. You need go, maybe a little searching in the first issue or episode of a show. That kind of establishes everything, and then really the rest of the show until the very final episodes are searching, and then they event. As long as it's like a show that has like a really specific ending attached to it, like Star Trek: The Next Generation didn't have like a strong, clear place it was going with the story, unlike say like a Breaking Bad that's you know episodic, but it's not. But it has like a specific story that they want to tell with it. Um, but so like in Breaking Bad, if you haven't seen it, he sets it up that way. But you can also do it like within individual. For a TV show, it's really handy because you can set up each episode to have a circle in it. It's own individual circle that's part of the search process. So if they're like there's the famous fly episode of Breaking Bad, and he's trying to destroy this fly that's gotten into his lab, and it costs them a lot to actually get it. And when they finally do get it, it causes some problems that they have to solve. But that's not like the ending of the show, and it deals with kind of like his own change in his character and how he gets that. So, and then there can be a circle for the entire season, so you can scatter story beats through every episode that are bringing you to the no season each season. Yeah. You can scatter kind of elements through each season that indicate each of those steps. So he's going to spend most of the season searching, but maybe the first episode of each season or each story arc begins with that. You need go. And then the rest of the season is searching, and at the very end of the season, it kind of comes to a resolution for the events of that season, even if it doesn't complete the actual show. So it's very, very useful framework, I think, for storytelling. And you can find there's a ton of videos discussing it online, just because you can see it in all kinds of movies. Like you see it in Inception, and you can see it in the Batman movies, or in a Marvel movie, or really in any movie, because you want to establish early on who the characters are and how they relate to each other, what's the thing that they're trying to do. So it's like what was it? I forget the name of this movie. It's the A24 movie with the hand in there. Not Reach Out to Me, but what's the name of that? But basically, in that movie, you have this girl. She's like young. I think was it late high school age, secondary school. I guess they're in Australia. Um, and she has good friends, and she likes her people she's hanging out with, and they like her. She wants to be more popular. Um, she's a good student. People respect her, like her. She's a little clingy, but that's just kind of who she is. She's had some tragedies in her life that she's kind of dealing with. But that's who the character is, and um, and then her need is, she wants to be more popular. She misses her mother. There's some kind of tragedy with her mother's death, and her relationship she has with her father isn't great. And so these are kind of the problems that she has in her life that we're going to deal with through the course of the movie. Doesn't mean these things get dealt with well, but she's like searching for her mother, or resolution of her mother. Like, what happened? Why did this terrible thing with her mother occur? And what does that mean for her? It's her big need in the show. And anyway, they come across this hand that lets them speak to the dead, and she decides to try it herself. So that's her go. And they go through all these experiences, speaking to different dead people as they play it as like a party game. They're using this hand to do that, and then it's a good time with these studies here, I think. But but at a certain point, as she's going through these different challenges, she's kind of hoping that her mother will show up as one of the ghosts, like so she can talk to her. And then one day, she does, and she decides to steal this hand. And they've established very specifically in the movie that you can only hold it for so long before it kind of takes full possession of you. And usually they tie you down so you can't move. But it becomes much more of a problem to excise the ghost if hold on too long. Anyway, so she takes the hand because she wants to talk to her mom. Understandable human response. And in the process of taking that, she nearly kills her. Well, her brother, or well, not brother, but her friend, who's kind of like her little brother. He almost kills himself because he holds on too long with this thing at one point. And but she discovers once though she's kind of in this spirit world where she's kind of talking to her mother, that all of a sudden this person that she's really talking to isn't her mother. And in the process of taking that, it changes. She pays that price, and the price turns out to be, in the movie, her life. She dies. She gets possessed. She's freaking out. She can't tell what's real, and she jumps in front of some traffic as she comes back, and she becomes a ghost, but she doesn't realize that's what she is. Um, so it's not always like a happy ending necessarily, but it's a great way of structuring a story, so you kind of know what to do. And that isn't the end of how you build a good story or tell one visually, but it's a good way of writing up a narrative, so you know what's going to happen when. And doesn't mean you have to stick to it absolutely. And different areas take different amounts of time, but the bigger their thing is, it gives you a big picture view of the story you want to tell. So, but in terms of telling a great story in a single image, it's again establishing what the different elements are of that image, along with, more importantly, what it is you want to convey. So if you're doing characters and you want to show, a knight fighting a dragon, well, why is he fighting the dragon? What makes that important? Is it just to show how cool the dragon is? Is he, does the dragon deserve the hassle he's getting from this guy? Why is that? Maybe there's a princess in there, or you can see that she's in danger. If this problem is not resolved. Um, there's something precarious about the nature of the scene. So it just depends, on the outcomes you're going for. When I'm teaching it in my classes, I usually kind of try and narrowly define the parameters. So, like, I give them a specific story to illustrate, or a type of story I want them to illustrate. And that doesn't even get into like the potential with use of symbols, like they do in editorial or conceptual illustration. Um, but yeah, those are some of the things that I've found useful. And of course, just looking at really great storytelling. Like I posted a picture in a story on my Instagram the other day. It's a Mead Schaefer painting of so it's a night scene, kind of lit by electric light, and there's a woman who's kind of in the full light. She's somewhat exposed and out in the open because she's in the full light, and then she's got a beautiful classy dress on from that time period, and behind her is a mysterious man, and you can't see his eyes very well because they're in shadow in his mouth, so kind of the expressive parts of his face are hidden. And um, and then the foreground is the driver, and he's completely in shadow, completely anonymous. And the I guess it's from a short story where it's about a young woman who's involved with a married man or something. So it's like a super dramatic story. So she's kind of got all this risk on her reputation, and being visible as this married man's escort, etc. So lots of drama. But it was a really great way of conveying the relationships of all the characters by how the artist, Mead Schaefer, staged the lighting, and then the kind of putting the characters in different positions within the framing of the picture. Who's in the foreground, who's in the middle ground, who's in the background, and then creating these really amazing kind of light and dark areas in order to convey all of that. So be 89 and 90, right? 90. And today is the 10th. Section. With sketchbooks and things like that, or any of your work, it's a good idea to label it somehow, even if you don't put it on the front, so people know what's going on. But so you remember later on, because a lot of times it's really easy to, with time, kind of forget what you did and why you did it and when you did it. And usually kind of the image itself is enough memory for me, but once you do kind of enough things, it can be a problem to remember when, especially, and what it was for or about. But anyway, that, I think, concludes our morning study. We're just under an hour, so sorry about that. So there's our little shots here we did today, and hopefully be back maybe later today. We'll see how the day goes, but I'm working on the pencils.